My name is Adrian Keller. I'm 28 years old, born and raised in Manchester, the kind of city where rain feels permanent and people learn early not to talk about what hurts. This is the story I've never told anyone. I call it, I was just a guest at the party. Then she said, stay a little longer. The night it started, I wasn't supposed to stay more than 20 minutes. It was a corporate engagement party for one of our firm's biggest clients. I worked as a project architect for a fast-growing development company. Long hours, impossible deadlines, and a managing director who believed sleep was a sign of weakness. The party was at a renovated warehouse apartment overlooking the canal. Exposed brick, low amber lighting, glasses clinking like polite applause. I remember checking my watch at 9:12 p.m., rehearsing my exit in my head. That's when I saw her. She was standing near the balcony doors, navy dress, hair pinned loosely like she hadn't tried too hard. She wasn't laughing loudly like the others. She was watching, observing. When our eyes met, it didn't feel accidental. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else, she said, appearing beside me without warning. Her voice was calm, not teasing, just certain. I could say the same about you, I replied. She smiled slightly. I live here. That caught me off guard. Her name was Alara Whitmore. The apartment belonged to her father, the client my company had been bending over backwards to impress for months. That realization landed like a quiet alarm bell in my chest. So you're the reason my boss has been losing his mind for weeks, I said. Probably, she said. He's been losing his mind for years. There was something in the way she said it. A weight behind the joke. We talked longer than I meant to. About architecture. About how Manchester was changing too fast. About how families can feel like contracts you never signed. At 10:03 p.m., I stepped toward the door. I should go. She looked at me. Not desperate, not pleading. Just steady. Stay a little longer. The words weren't flirtatious. They were softer than that. Almost like a request not to be alone. And I stayed. We moved to the balcony. The city lights reflected in the canal like broken gold. Music thumped faintly behind us, but out there it felt suspended, like we'd stepped outside time. Do you ever feel, she said quietly, like everyone around you is performing a version of themselves they don't even recognize anymore? I hesitated. Every day at work. She nodded. My father built an empire on control. He thinks love works the same way. There it was again, that heaviness. Before I could respond, her fiancé stepped outside. Tall, impeccable suit. The kind of smile that feels sharpened. Everything all right out here? He asked, his eyes landing on me a second too long. Perfect, Alara said. But her hand brushed mine briefly. A silent contradiction. I left at midnight, but something followed me home. Not guilt, not excitement. A question. Why had she needed me to stay? The next Monday, I walked into the office to find my managing director waiting at my desk. Adrian, he said coolly. Apparently you made quite an impression Saturday night. My stomach tightened. Alara's father had called. And suddenly, the party didn't feel accidental at all. I didn't sleep that night. By Tuesday morning, the office felt different. Not louder, not colder, just observant. Conversations lowered when I walked past. My managing director, Colin, called me into his glass-walled office before I'd even set my bag down. He didn't ask me to sit. Mr. Whitmore was very specific, Colin said, adjusting his cufflinks. He wants you assigned directly to the canal redevelopment proposal. That wasn't a promotion. It was pressure wrapped in flattery. He mentioned your conversation with his daughter. There it was. We spoke at the party, I said carefully. That's all. Colin gave me a thin smile. Let's make sure that remains the only narrative. I left his office with a folder thick enough to feel like a warning. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked closer to the Whitmore account than anyone else in the firm. Late nights, private strategy calls, meetings in the towering glass building that bore her father's name in steel letters. And then she walked into one of those meetings. Alara didn't belong in corporate conference rooms. She moved through them like someone passing through an airport, present but detached. Her fiancé, Marcus, sat at the head of the table beside her father. Controlled, polished. Her father didn't acknowledge the party. Not directly, but he watched me. When the meeting ended, she lingered by the floor-to-ceiling windows. You look exhausted, she said softly. So do you. She smiled faintly. Occupational hazard. We stood there in silence until Marcus stepped out to take a call. You shouldn't have stayed that night, she said, her voice almost lost in the hum of the building. The words hit harder than I expected. I know, I admitted, but I'm glad you did. The contradiction tangled between us. That was the first time I understood something dangerous. This wasn't about attraction. Not just that. It was about recognition. Two people who saw the cracks behind each other's performances. A week later, she called me. Not through the office. Directly. How did you get my number? I asked. You left your business card on the balcony table, she said. I kept it. We met at a quiet cafe far from the city center. No corporate towers. No polished floors. Just rain against the windows. My father thinks you're ambitious, she said, stirring her coffee. He respects that. That doesn't sound like a compliment. It isn't. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. Marcus is merging his firm with my father's company after the wedding, she said. It's strategic. And you? I asked. She held my gaze. I'm part of the merger. The weight of it settled in my chest. This wasn't romance. This was entrapment disguised as luxury. Why are you telling me this? I asked. She hesitated. Because when I asked you to stay that night, I wasn't asking for company. I was asking for a reminder. A reminder of what? That I still have a choice. The air between us changed. I should have walked away. Instead, I said, you do. Her hand moved toward mine, then stopped halfway. And in that unfinished gesture, everything became real. 2 days later, Colin called me into his office again. Whitmore wants a private dinner, he said. You'll attend. It wasn't optional. That evening, I arrived at the Whitmore residence, a mansion built like a fortress. Marcus was already there. So was Alara. Her father poured wine with steady hands. To loyalty, he said, but his eyes were on me. Halfway through dinner, he leaned back in his chair. You're talented, Adrian. Young. Driven. I admire that. Thank you, sir. I also value clarity. His gaze shifted briefly to Alara. Some boundaries are essential. Personal entanglements complicate business. The message wasn't subtle. Marcus smirked slightly. Alara didn't look at anyone. And for the first time, I felt fear, not of losing my job, but of what would happen if I didn't lose her. When I left that night, my phone buzzed. A text from her. I'm not safe here. My pulse pounded. Before I could reply, another message came through. Meet me tomorrow. 8 p.m. Same balcony. The same balcony where this started. And suddenly, I realized something terrifying. Maybe I hadn't been invited to that first party by chance. Maybe I'd been positioned. And I had no idea by whom. The next night, the city felt unusually still. I stood across the canal at 7:58 p.m., staring at the warehouse balcony where this story had begun. The lights inside flickered warm against the dark water. Music drifted faintly upward again. Another gathering, another performance. Only this time, I wasn't a guest. At exactly 8, she stepped out onto the balcony. Alone. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just waited. I crossed the small pedestrian bridge with a pulse that wouldn't settle. Every step felt like I was walking towards something irreversible. When I reached her, she didn't waste time. My father knows, she said. The words landed calmly, but her hands were trembling. Knows what? I asked. That I don't want this marriage. That I've been meeting you. She swallowed. He doesn't know how I feel about you, but he suspects enough. The balcony doors slid shut behind us, muffling the music. We were alone with the wind and the quiet slap of water below. Marcus confronted me this morning, she continued. He said your promotion depends on how cooperative I remain. My stomach dropped. So that's what this was. Not just a warning. Leverage. I never asked for any of this, I said, the frustration rising in my throat. I didn't plan to be part of your family's chessboard. I know, she said quickly. That's why I trust you. Trust. The word felt too heavy. She stepped closer. My father invited your firm to pitch for the canal redevelopment 6 months ago, before I ever met you. That's normal. Yes, she said quietly. But he requested you personally. My mind stalled. I was just a junior architect then. He said he liked your designs, that you were ambitious. A memory surfaced, an email months ago, complimenting a presentation I barely remembered giving. I had thought it was luck. It wasn't luck. You think he placed me there? I asked. I think my father studies people, she said. And I think he saw you as useful. For what? She hesitated. For me. The realization hit like cold water. Her father hadn't been afraid of an affair. He had engineered proximity. If I grew close to her, he'd control me through my career. If I stayed distant, I'd remain professionally dependent. Either way, he won. You were never supposed to matter, she whispered. Just motivate. Silence pressed in around us. And do I? I asked. She looked at me the way she had that first night, steady, unguarded. Yes. For the first time since this began, nothing felt strategic. It felt terrifyingly real. Inside, I could see Marcus scanning the room through the glass, searching for her. You said you're not safe? I reminded her. I'm not, she said. Not if I keep pretending. The canal lights shimmered below us like fractured promises. Then leave, I said. She searched my face. With you? That was the question. Not romantic. Not cinematic. Practical. Leaving meant burning her family's empire behind her. It meant my career collapsing under quiet blacklists. It meant starting over without safety nets. I don't want to rescue you, I said carefully. And I don't want to be your rebellion. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. I want you to choose yourself, I continued. Even if that choice isn't me. The wind moved through her hair. For a moment, she looked smaller than the world built around her. Then something shifted. She straightened. I've spent my whole life being negotiated, she said. Tonight, I'm not. The balcony door opened behind us. Marcus stepped out, jaw tight. Alara, he said sharply. She didn't flinch. I'm not marrying you, she said calmly. The words were quiet, but they detonated. Marcus looked at me, fury flashing. This is your fault. No, she said before I could speak. It's mine. Footsteps echoed from inside. Her father approaching. The empire closing in. She turned back to me. If I walk inside and say this in front of them, everything changes, she said. For both of us. I felt fear, yes, but I also felt clarity. I'll be here, I said. Not as leverage, not as ambition, just here. She nodded once and stepped inside. Voices rose. Sharp, controlled, then louder. Through the glass, I watched her stand in the center of that polished room and refuse to be traded. I don't remember how long it lasted. I only remember when she came back out. Alone. It's done, she said. Her eyes were red, but steady. And your job? She asked. I'll find another. And if my father makes sure you don't? I looked out at the canal, at the city that had raised me on resilience. Then I'll build something smaller, I said. But it'll be mine. She stepped closer. No dramatic kiss. No cinematic embrace. Just two people standing at the edge of everything familiar. I don't know what happens next, she admitted. Neither do I. But for the first time, uncertainty didn't feel like a trap. It felt like freedom. We didn't run away that night. We didn't win some perfect fairy tale. My firm did lose the Whitmore contract. Colin let me go 3 weeks later, politely, professionally. It hurt, but I found work elsewhere. Smaller projects. Slower growth. Honest growth. As for Alara, she moved out of the mansion within a month. Public tension followed. Headlines whispered. Investors shifted. Empires tremble quietly before they fall. We took our time. No rushing. No rebellion disguised as romance. Just two people learning how to exist without being controlled. And here's what I've learned. Sometimes the most dangerous words aren't, I love you. They're stay a little longer. Because staying can wake you up. It can force you to confront whether you're living by choice or by fear. That night on the balcony, I thought I was just a guest at a party. But I was really standing at a crossroads. And the truth is, love isn't about saving someone. It's about standing beside them while they save themselves. That's the part no one tells you. And that's why this is the story I've never told anyone.